So we will.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm the guest of the man known by Time Magazine as the King Kong of King Kong. Someone there is listening, and they'll say, "Oh, we forgot to put that up." But he's a wonderful friend, great musician, great statesman, great civil rights person for Croatia before anyone even knew mostly where Croatia was, and of course, the fabulous Mr. Michael Spudik, who is a one-man campaign for helping singer-songwriters, classical composers, actors, freethinkers to hang in there when everyone tells them it's a waste of time, and encourage and mentor people to be creative and dare to follow their dreams. Tall order, a lot of people talk about that. Very few people do anything, and he does it well and makes it fun and never gives you the impression that he's doing that. So, Michael, it's great to see you. It's
always appreciate his words.
And in an uncustomary turn of events for all my friends at 91, I'm following my kid's advice, which is, Daddy, you're very talented, but please don't talk so much.
We don't have a show, David. You don't. You have to. You must.
Let me just take the medication I need to take. Just a moment. You to talk. Just a moment.
David, apologies. I was at your gig on your big birthday bash, but I could only stay for about 15 minutes. I heard the last movement of the saxophone, the three movements.
Yes.
And I had to leave.
Yeah. He's phenomenal.
It was a great, great party as always. I've been to others, and it's a marathon, birthday marathon at the Theater for the New City.
Well, this year I kept it. I told Crystal when I was in Pakistan, the pieces were usually, when I was in Lahore, Radio Lahore, they said probably be 13 or 14 hours. I said, oh. They said, you can go out to eat or anything else you have to do. Just don't interrupt people because they're going to record everything. And that concert, when they start playing, it can be that long. So I
saw your videographer in the audience. Is somebody, I'm told, is making a film, David? Is there a new film or it's a continuation?
But I meant to say this in terms of the marathon at the Theater of the New City. So my first one, we started around 8 and ended at 4:30 in the morning. People said it was fun, but it was a bit lengthy for the Western world. So I kept cutting it back. And this year I said, I'm going to make a program up like you do when you're doing a symphony concert or anything else. And I started off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, Stravinsky said, music expresses itself. So wow. I talked to you during the break. And my kids said, Daddy, that was all right. I said, the concert was one of the best concerts because you didn't talk too much. So I learned a lesson from that.
That's what they said.
I love listening, as you know, when I'm playing with others or with one person, or listening to someone else, as I did with Guy Davis when he gave a solo section that was just extraordinary. So I'd like to listen to you guys. I hope that our great friend, good friend of Dennis, who's a doctor, will be able to come tonight, but she's always busy.
Right.
So that they can know that we also have women on the program who are intelligent, articulate, and have something to say as fellow human beings and fellow or sister artists, brothers. That's not being politically correct. It's just dealing with 52% of the population who teach us a lot of stuff about everything. And it's a shame that in Western culture for the last 1,000 years, they've been kind of put in the back seat.
Underestimated, yeah.
That's all changing, not because we think it's a good idea, but because it is a good idea. Mm-hmm. So, Doctor, if you're there, Dr. Nidhi, please come on and say hi.
Chime in.
We can give her a call to see where she is.
And she's the one who introduced me to this and to Nenad when he had about a year ago, and she was on one time with us, and brilliant. So how are you guys doing?
Hanging in there, David. Little trip into Manhattan. I got in touch with Doug and with Murray Weinstock. I wonder if either of them can chime in tonight. I'm hoping so.
Good.
Murray is going to a wedding tomorrow, and he had some things to prepare tonight, but we'll see. Otherwise, things are quite normal here. I'm out in Queens, Forest Hills. Not too far from where you visit. You have family in, am I told, in Ridgewood?
Well, the Ridgewood, where my daughter lives now, is the part that's right adjacent to
Bushwick,
which is where my son Adam and other daughter Alana live, about a block from one another. And Adair is right on the corner of Ridgewood, and C.F. Peters, the publishers of Mozart and Beethoven, whom I'm lucky to be with.
They're in Glendale. They're right around the corner from me. They're blocks down. Yep.
And for those of your viewers, of our millions of followers around the world, all of whom are following something else, come on back with us and see the show. At any rate, I'm lucky enough to be with them. And so everything I dreamed of in my life, of having a family someday and being a composer whose works could be played as a composer, not as Dr. Frankenstein breaking the piano in half or anything else, but actually having the music have some value and say something to those who want to play it. Therefore, people listening to it will hear something being said rather than reading about a 400-page explanation. That's all right there in Queens, where over 100 languages are spoken, where Jack Kerouac spent 12 years in Ozone Park, and we're still going to do Michael Spudik and I are still.
We got to wander through.
Before my 100th birthday, which is only 9 years, that gives us 9 years to prepare to do some kind of a program there to honor that. And Queens is one of those terrific of the 5 boroughs of New York City, which is also terrific, and in spite of all the problems. So for those of you watching who say, well, I wish I'd been in New York 50 or 60 years ago. Well, it was pretty fantastic hundreds of years ago before any of us came over here on boats. Yeah. And it's still fantastic. And Queens is one of those fabulous places that is under the radar because over 100 languages are spoken. And therefore, it's very difficult to make a Queens cultural monopoly fast killing because there's too many folks.
I never thought of it that way, David. There's just so much, you know.
I just thought of it now, which is like so many things in all 5 boroughs. There's a lot of treasures and diamonds in those sidewalks and needles in those haystacks, but they're not something that can be exploited where you can triple your income in a week. Therefore, they're considered non-existent or non-newsworthy.
Yeah, under the radar.
Hey. So as Chuck Berry said, roll over Beethoven. Of course, Tchaikovsky's got the news. What I think what he was saying, among other things, was that there's a lot of music going on, has been a lot of music going on, will be, and that we shouldn't have one idol, but someone who isn't an idol like Beethoven, for very good reason, means we should be listening more closely to him and then listening more closely to everyone else who's not so they can be the next Beethoven, but because they also have something worthy to say. And therefore, we have something worthy to say. Now, you can't make any money off of that philosophy, but you can have a much better time, more fun, and get to learn a lot from some very interesting people who we would never be told in any of the big journals are worthy of study or can make you more prominent by hanging out with them. So be creative, ignore your career counselors, have a good time, pay attention, have some love for your own kids and your own family and your old friends, and enjoy the blessings that surround us. And as far as the disgusting news that we see, they've had disgusting news for thousands of years, and we still somehow go on. Miles Davis summed that up perfectly by naming his great song, So What?
Yeah. So the beauty matters, actually.
Beautiful.
You know, I don't know if you saw this film called Why Beauty Matters by Roger Scruton. It's an interesting documentary film. So beauty does matter.
It does.
Yeah.
And Nemeth, you proved that Schopenhauer was right when they said, what can we do to make this world a better place? And he said, ping that pong.
Schopenhauer said that, Carl.
No, he didn't, but he should have. That's revisionist history. If they didn't say it, they should have.
The American Schopenhauer said it. The philosopher over on Main Street here in Flushing, Queens said it.
So tell me something important, like some existential question. Where did you get your T-shirt?
Oh yeah, what's going on with your shirt?
Not T-shirt, but shirt.
Oh, this one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yellow one.
That was this year's Farm Aid, which was held in Hartford, Connecticut, a suburb close to where Michael lives, not Queens, but Hartford, which is, if you go past Ozone Park and keep on going, you'll eventually get to Hartford.
Hartford, Connecticut?
If you can go through the traffic. It's not that far if you look on the map. Oh,
Right.
boy. But what a drive. It was worth it, though. And two of the people, Carolyn Mugar and wonderful Glenda Yoder came to the concert, Michael, and I was so thrilled to see them because I've been seeing them since. And I had my Farm Aid 4 pin, the second Farm Aid I went to in 1988. The first one was 87, then I went Farm Aid 3. And I put that pin on and my pass just in case they would, so they'd know I was thinking of them. Farm Aid, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a wonderful thing that Willie Nelson, Neil Young, John Mellencamp started. Now they have Dave Matthews as the fourth kind of internationally known person. And they essentially are on the board that helps Farm Aid, which is a year-round organization to help family farmers. And believe it or not, the money that they get from 30-some thousand people buying tickets to see these 12 hours of incredible music, rather than going into the hands of drug dealers, limo companies, and assorted people. I won't cast aspersions on people I don't know. People who not only don't care about family farmers, but don't even know that our food doesn't all come from the chain store. And all that money goes to Farm Aid, which is a year-round organization that actually helps farmers. So it's the only huge benefit, one of the only huge benefits I've ever played, where when it's all over, you hear nothing but speeches about people's record sales, mental problems, and various addictions. And you say, gee, I wonder what the benefit was for. All I heard was 12 hours of infomercials. There, the stars are the family farmers and their situation and the idea of nourishment and having a healthier society. And the great thing is that it has changed the situation. When I first came, 1987, played Farm Aid 3 in Lincoln, Nebraska, the more cynical cognoscenti said, that's just another flavor of the month. That's just a peeping gasp of what Woodstock was like. It's just a big jive promo festival. Well, all these years later, the family farmers are doing a tiny bit better rather than disappearing. And secondly, people are eating better food. They have organic food sections in all the supermarkets, even if half of it isn't organic, at least they're thinking about that. And many of the schools, public schools, are now getting their communities, farmers, as the source of their food, rather than having it imported by a mega corporation that puts it on an 18-wheeler and you get something 3 weeks old, which is better than starving or eating it out of a can. But our kids are having the option of getting a little better nourishment and supplied by the farmers who live in their communities. I just wanted to mention that because it's a really good thing. And a lot of things are wonderful to be part of, but it turns out that the famous Bangladesh circle was drawn like a piece of pie, the way Russ Perot, used to tell us about stuff. And they show the different parts of the pie. And a huge part of the pie belongs to Alan Klein, if he's still alive, indicating they're not sure where those funds are or if they ever went to anybody. And the amount of money that the people from Bangladesh themselves got is almost just a sliver of that colossal amount of money that was raised worldwide, which was good to make people aware that there was a place called Bangladesh and that there were people struggling. But the Rohingya refugees are now having a terrible time there. And it was a nice idea, but it didn't actually fulfill the function of what it was supposed to do, was to help out a lot of people who were really, really up against it. I guess that's why a lot of us wish that that billionaire, instead of sending a bunch of egomaniacs into outer space, could have taken all that money and maybe had one day where he offered to buy a sandwich for the millions of people who are going to bed hoping they can wake up the next morning because they're literally starving to death. And I'm not trying to bring you down or listeners down, because it's not hopeless. And there are people every day that we never hear about who do good stuff. And Farm Aid is one of the big organizations that talks about doing good stuff and does it, which means all of us can do something in our little way too. So I'm not a professional do-gooder or an activist, although I'm still hyperactive. I just have some concern about the world we live in and realize that all of us can do something, some tiny little thing, somehow, sometime, somewhere, someday, to make things better, and think about those who do that. And both of you guys, Michael Spudik and Nenad Bach,
and now Murray Weinstock, David Murray Weinstock has arrived.
Also, everybody.
Hey.
There's a lot of people like that. Murray's a fantastic piano player, and he's so modest and so kind. And makes everybody feel so good, even old people like me. That with him, you don't realize, man, there's a guy, he's a heavyweight himself, but he never gives a big laundry list of all the people he's played with and all the stuff he's done. He just does it.
I have a question for Murray.
Yes.
It was yesterday was John Holbrook's birthday, and you said that you worked with John Holbrook.
Oh yeah.
What did you do with him?
I worked on the first thing that I did was with Artie Traum. Artie Traum made an album up in Woodstock, and I was fortunate enough to be part of that album and the Woodstock Mountain Review as well, which Artie.
Which year was that?
It's a little bit foggy for me.
70s, something 70s?
Yeah.
70s.
And John was just like amazing to work with. And he was an engineer, but that's really doesn't describe all that he could do, because he could sing, he could play. And I wrote some songs with him for his I forget what his name was. Johnny. He had an alias that he used, so I wrote some songs for his alias. But he was a terrific guitar. Brian Briggs.
Brian Briggs.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Did you know David? Did you know John Holbrook, or you never met?
John
Holbrook.
Coltrane?
Holbrook.
Like.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I think I met him years ago well, that's why I met Murray and you, Nenad. And Michael, I'm not positive it was right there, but in Greenwich Village, where I lived for 40 years, and I walk out on the street.
Yeah.
And when I still go there, every time I walk out of the street, you bump in some fantastic person, whether it's a bartender, a movie man, a waitress, or a songwriter, a composer, a sculptor, or just someone from New Jersey looking for a better life.
We had a song that we wrote together called "Here to Win, Not Just to Play. Won't let nobody stand in my way. We're here to win." You know? And that was so energized. And we went to and also John Holbrook worked with oh God.
Brian Setzer.
What?
Brian Setzer.
No, Brian Setzer, but also the guy who sang "I love you more than I loved you before, and how I find comfort, God knows."
Yeah, from Nashville guy.
Who was a native of Woodstock. And we went to Japan. And when, the most unbelievable thing that happened when John Lennon got shot, we were scheduled to go and perform at this big concert hall, and we immediately, Randy Van Warmer was the singer, and we just automatically put Imagine into the set, and it was just, it is hard to sing that song to begin with, but that day was so difficult, but it really felt like connecting with the audience, and the fact that this had happened. We needed all the warmth and connection that we could get that day. It was tough, and I shared that with John. And
David, John was a special guy. He died recently.
I know.
He was a special guy. He understood the visuals. He understood the music, understood structure, and he was a very inventive man, technologically inventive.
Technologically,
brilliant,
unbelievable.
I made over 10 albums with him.
I know that's amazing.
And
I can miss him.
Yeah.
Well, did John Holbrook ever attend the Guthrie parties, Nenad?
No, never.
No, he wouldn't have been at the party.
There's so many, that's the weird thing about turning 91. Pete Seeger said, David, this was a long time ago, he said, after to be 60, like I am, this was 40 years ago, I guess almost. He said, you're going to spend, over 40 years ago, he said, you're going to spend a lot of time going to funerals. And I said, God bless Pete.
He said that?
But I said,
getting him ready.
Pete's such a gentleman. I said, that's not going to happen to me, man. That's just Pete. And now, Barry Harris, God, one of the giants of the scene, one of the world's great natural teachers. I met so many people from Detroit when I was playing with Mingus, Pepper Adams and Doug Watkins and Paul Chambers and Donald Byrd and Julius Watkins and all three of the Hank Jones, Elvin Jones, etc. They all told me about Barry Harris going to his basement and learning all that fantastic harmonic language and stuff that they knew about music that was just so amazing, and how Barry was the guy that was like their mentor, not making them his mental slave, was just someone who shared all that knowledge graciously and made them feel good about it. So when I finally met him in New York about 25 years ago, I said, Barry, I feel like I know you already. I knew so much stuff, and all the times I was with him, he was just a natural teacher, generous, terrific player. And Now he's gone. I said, boy, I can't believe it. But then you think about the people that you've known when so many of them check out of the room for the last time. And you realize, well, the only way to deal with that without bumming everybody out or just feeling depressed is just to do what Theo Bickel told me. It was 85th birthday. He was playing at Carnegie Hall, and the kind of guy he was, some organization said they wanted to honor him. And he said, well, let's do something for kids. So it was some huge organization that helps out children. They sold out Carnegie Hall, which is no easy feat. And it was a packed. He came out and said, ladies and gentlemen, people say, Theo, you're 85 years old. Is everything all right? And he said, I tell them not to worry. Never felt better. He said, in the theater, we never die. We just go on tour. Whoa. And everybody laughed. And I said, well, man, that's the way to think about it. And then we can have all those good thoughts like President you mentioned, or people that we could think about every day. And I was talking to someone, I'm going to a service, a guy I was in the Army with in 1953, Nenad Bach, one of my closest friends. And I was talking to his brother. We were talking for an hour of all the stuff we did together since I met him through his brother, Nenad Bach. And I said, wow, I told him that story. And he, as depressed as he was, he busted out laughing too, because that's really it. And he said, well, man, someday that's good. We're all going to die. So let's think about now and let's see what we can do when we're alive. So in our live fast, die young culture of nothing like a dead, stoned out, drug addicted, miserable, sociopathic derelict to be a marvelous artist and live in humanity because they suck so much in real life. That's fine for those who want to put all of our artists, idealists, people who love each other into a special toilet because of their branding of who's who and what's what. That's acceptable, and in democracy, you have a right to be a schmuck. However, there are things that are beautiful, and I think the most important thing we could tell our kids and everybody is, if you think of death as part of the gig, then you can put that on the side. That's the one sure thing that's going to happen, and you can start to check out, hey, as Phil Oakes said, got to more or less, you have to do it while you're here, and what can you do while you're here? And then you can be obsessed with what of the now, and that's enough already. So I think it's good to honor the people, but for their life and what they did during their life and what they gave to you, so you could do something for your life. And
or as Jimi Hendrix said, I'm the one who's got to die when it's my turn to die. So
wow.
Let me live my life the way I want to.
Oh, wow. That's fair, man. Could I quote you on that, Murray?
But I'm just feeding Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
So David, you channel so wonderfully.
Great.
So David, I see that you are pulling my fingers like this quite often. Is that some gymnastics that you do, or for fingers or something? Because I see you doing this like all the time.
Maybe we should all do that.
You do that all the time. Is there some like exercise for the fingers? I notice you do that all the time. Is there some like massage or?
David, you keep your fingers busy. Like we see things.
I didn't even know I was doing that.
Yeah, you're doing it all the time, and I'm asking myself whether that's something good. Maybe I should learn. Maybe I'm missing on something.
Yeah. I was going to ask you to show me how to do it, and you did, but I didn't realize that I already knew how to do it.
You can watch the video later, and you will see.
This morning, just to make you younger younger viewers, all the millions of them who watch this show, feel good if you think your toes aching and you're a goner. These two fingers, whatever they're called, the two middle fingers on this hand, they were like that, and I couldn't get them open. I said, "Oh man!" Well, I realized I remember seeing some Broadway play, and the person who played an old justice when he was 85 years old, he kept going like that. And then I started watching older people, which I now am, but I used to be a younger older person. They would be going like that, and I realized, well, that's like Tony Bennett said. No, man, he said you got to keep moving. So if he saw some stairs, instead of going the escalator, he would walk up the stairs, and I think he sort of kept on moving. So I thought about that, and I think that's probably the best way. And then if you can keep the brain somehow functioning, that sometimes you say, "Oh man, I forgot the name, I forgot this and that, I'm not doing this and that." But
what is it? What is that? The brain?
the brain muscle, whatever that's called, the brain,
Oh,
the brain.
the brain.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
If you can keep the brain sort of active and take the negative, rotten, disgusting thoughts that we're bombarded with, and put those in one corner, in the that's why in the landfill, and let it sit there quietly as part of the information or misinformation pool, then it's there. Like if there's a yin and a yang, I guess you got to check out the yin in order to appreciate the yang. So if you see it or around the negative stuff, that's good because it's showing you, man, that's a drag when you got to be a viewer or a victim of that crap. So maybe that part of my DNA, I will try to squelch when I feel an attack of Donald Trumpism coming on. I'll say, wait a minute. All the people of that style got that covered. So you can leave the swinish, putrescent behavior to the experts. You always got to leave it to the experts, not feel guilty that you're not being a big enough pig, because you can see from those who were ardent, militant, swinish type people, they're showing us what you become if you endorse that. And at the same time, that doesn't mean they're the enemy. It just means they feel that way. And somehow we have to respect that. So when someone was interviewing me about something, they said, "Oh man, you're very spiritual." I said, "Not really. I'm just trying to hang in there and survive and not go nuts and do something and be a better person, better composer, better father, all that." I said, "But the most important thing is for," she said, "Well, how do you deal with forgiveness?" And I suddenly flashed, "Oh, that's, you got to be like Mr. Rogers and say, 'I love everybody, and you're cool, and you're beautiful.'" And, rather than that, I said, the hardest thing is to forgive yourself. And then I thought about that. And I said, man, I think of all the stuff I've done. I wish I hadn't done that, but I already did. So wallowing in guilt, as Pete Seeger told me about the treatment of the American Indian people after they'd welcomed his Mayflower forebears here, that it was disgraceful. But Pete said, and it always stuck with me, feeling guilty is a self-indulgence and a waste of time. But trying to do a little tiny bit for others and share the tiny bit that you can when you can is very important. So, of course, he wasn't giving the answer we all want of 35 seconds, you could be a saint, popular, groovy, live forever, be very popular, rich, if you'll only give $900 to follow my philosophy. That's what they call what I call the Burger Kingization of ancient religions. It's not about fake spirituality, just being for real and trying to act like a mensch and trying to be human. And that's something that anybody and everybody can teach you. And you can even find people every second if you know that that's what you'd like to be, and look for that and see a lot of beauty and humanity that's just there, that hasn't been stomped out, and not allow that yourself to be stomped out with that tsunami of garbage that we're told is the way we should be in order to be somebody.
Amen. Brother.
Amen to that, David. Dave, you said so many eloquent words. Can I ask you a question about your relationship to Phil Oakes? Because you channel him so well. And there's that one song in particular that you perform, and When I'm Gone.
Yeah, I love that one. Well, you
the
know,
other side of the coin there.
Phil suddenly got stuck. I don't have to tell Murray, because I met Murray, God, it must have been over 50 years ago. And I knew he was a terrific musician and a great guy. I had no idea until recently all the fantastic stuff he's done, still does, and is going to do, because he didn't carry a big signboard and a notebook around with his credentials. He was being right there at the time. And there were a lot of people like that. And Phil came as a wonderful poet and a wonderful person that loved folk music, loved this country, and was concerned about the world and about life, and just a terrific guy. And because of the fact of the nature of politics and the staggering record sales that came from what became the anti-war industry, not the people like Dave Dellinger who went to jail during World War II because they really believed that was wrong to go and shoot strangers. But a lot of the very sincere pacifists and activists and people who really cared about stuff were sort of put in the background and became showbiz extraordinary. So they get suburban people to dress up like Che Guevara and say, shoot the pigs and all that stuff. That was like a whole business trip. And Phil, I think, because he was against all war and against killing people, he became known as a protest singer. That was like saying, Muhammad Ali was a mammal or Joe DiMaggio was an athlete. Yeah, we know that, but there were a lot more than that slot. And Phil was much more than a protest singer. He was a poet and a thinking person, and he got put in that slot. So therefore, when someone convinced him that he should be a big rival of Bob Dylan, which was ridiculous and wasn't really that way, everybody appreciated and criticized and admired and spoke frankly to everybody. I was just on the fringe of that, living in the village, playing backup for all these amazing young people that came in because I was older than them. And I really liked him, and I loved his singing and just the way he did stuff and the kind of person he was. So about 10 days before he died, he was at Folk City, and he called up and said, "Dave, I'm over here. They're doing this big thing honoring me. None of these people know me. They don't have any idea. They're all coming over to the bar." And I said, "But they don't have any clue about, can you just come over so we can hang out?" So I went over there, and they said, "Oh, we're going to have him play something." So he was looking really depressed. So I made up some dumb song, my summer camp entertainment with rhymes type stuff about Phil. And then he started laughing and got up and played. And I really had such a nice time. That was the last time I saw him, where he was actually able to have some fun. But I realized that all the things that he sort of became celebrated for and the kind of person he was supposed to be really left him feeling, hey, I'm a human being. I'm a person. I'm a poet. I'm a writer. He was just really kind of an old-fashioned artist, an old-fashioned person. Because an old-fashioned artist is just a regular person that doesn't give up when they're told for the 400th time, "You're wasting your time. Get a job doing something you hate, and maybe you could screw the person who's above you and end up, before you get your gold watch and die, making even more money." And that idea that life is just a big hustle, that's a part of our culture, just like there's a sucker born every minute was a part of our culture. But then there's the other part of our culture, which Phil had, which is, to do a good job and to be valuable and to do something while you're here. So I said, man, I started doing that. And Doug said, "No, it's wonderful of you." And I never saw it. But Doug Yeager explained to me, for an older person, to sing a song by a great younger person like that who left us too early, that was about doing something while you're here, was good for what would be termed an older geezer, like I guess that's technically what it would be, 91, an alta caja, as they say. Singing something by a younger guy that was about, let's all see if we can do something, that was so far removed from the image of the angry protester singer rival of Bob Dylan. That's a bunch of BS to categorize everybody as being worthless slobs. And
I remember Phil when I saw him on Houston Street. That was the last time, and he was wearing this silver outfit that he had gotten into, and I just thought, man, you don't need to do that, And
I think there was some mental illness, Murray, from what I understand.
I know, and Lucian Truscott, the writer, was so beautifully kind to Phil Oakes, and sometimes would get him to come over, and Lucian would make dinner for him.
Oh.
That's and it's just acts of kindness or something to remember and hold dear.
Yeah. It's great to hear that, Murray, and wonderful for the people watching and listening also to hear that from you, because you were there.
Yeah. Anyway, I miss Phil. His voice, what was the song? An occasional friend, or a friend of mine that he had, that was just awe-inspiring, with that voice of his. They used to play every night on WBAI. They'd play that song.
Mm-hmm.
And he was some poet like Leonard Cohen. You start to read his lyrics. I did one for his sister, Sonny Oakes, and she had people come, and each of us were given the choice of doing 2 songs. And then she sat there on the side of the stage, and she knew every word. So you couldn't get creative and start making up a whole bunch of torrent of spontaneous rap summer camp entertainment. You really had to do just like Shakespeare. It was much hipper to do what the Bard of Avon wrote on paper than to say, well, I think I'll take Willie the Shake and make my own. Lord Buckley did that great, but that was a different thing. He did it with love and reverence for Shakespeare. But if you do it Shakespeare just the way he wrote it, it doesn't need any Hollywood nose job plastic surgery. It doesn't need what they call woik. It's fine the way it is. And Phil's lyrics, I always put those on the piano. So even with my torrent of spontaneous stuff, man, when I'm doing his song or Woody Guthrie's song or anybody else's, I put the lyrics right up there so I could try to sing as best I can exactly the words that they wrote, even if I use different music, and make each word clear so people can hear what they were saying to us through their words. That's scarcely considered to be important, but I learned that from Clifford Brown when I was playing jazz on the French horn. He said, man, he said, that's great. He said, I can hear what you're doing, but he said, most people can't, especially with a horn. He said, make every note clear as a bell, just like Jascha Heifetz does when he's playing the Beethoven violin concerto. No matter how fast, you can hear every note. And he said, that's what I try to do when I'm playing the trumpet. I said, wow, that never occurred to me, because I figured this is what I'm hearing. Part of what I was hearing I couldn't do. Part of what I was hearing other people wouldn't do unless they were a musician and played. And third of all, he was right in the first place that every note should be a winner. Every note should be clear. So when you're doing someone's songs, every word should be intelligible. So when my kids were teenagers and they were bringing back those records and I'd hear that, The only thing I didn't hear was any one word or one melody. All I heard was thump bunk. Buy that record, thunk, thunk, hammer you to death to be hip and make that money and throw it in the garbage. I heard that constantly. I said, wait, but those poor kids, man, they're getting ripped off. So I said to my daughter, look, I said, when I go to your middle school concerts, I can hear the songs better that you guys sing than I can when they're on the records. Why on the record can't you understand one word? They said, well, now, Daddy, that's in the back of the record, so we can read it off. That's when they had CD or LPs. They said, we can read off the back of the labels. Well, I realized those recordings were not made and financed by teenagers. That was grown-ups. And the grown-ups obviously didn't care about the lyrics, the songs, anything, and thought that they were worthless. Therefore, the way to get that across for people to buy those records before they threw them into the garbage to be replaced by other garbage bound records was to take what those people who were merchandising it considered to be worthless and drown it out with a bunch of thunk, splat, blap, boom, bop, in order to make people who felt sexually dysfunction feel that they were more groovy, part of the inner circle, hip, belong to something, and go out and take that money and buy it. It never occurred to them, maybe if you're going to take some money and buy something, for one thing, it should have some long-term value. And secondly, if it's supposed to be music, literature, poetry, it's supposed to have a lifetime of value. And then you give it to your kids and grandkids. In other words, it's supposed to have be not worthless. So therefore, if the people who were merchandising it and selling it think it's worthless, you're not going to get much anything particularly worthy out of it. So the extraordinary thing is that so many of the singer-songwriters then, way before, people playing in the worst conditions, left us and still leave us and still create more than ever so much terrific music and so many terrific songs. And it's such a joy to go to the Folk Music International and the Kerrville Festival and the one in Okemah, and just hanging out with you, Murray, and people we know, just to hear and see all the terrific people that is still creative. Guy Davis Jr. came and sang on my birthday concert. Man, those songs of his were so good. And other people that nobody ever heard of, I hear all the time, are just so terrific. And then people who were my contemporaries that I never heard are so wonderful. And we could thank YouTube and the internet for that. Mm. And you can have a program like this where, and I'll be quiet so I can hear you guys, where you guys can discuss things that would never be heard unless you were in a room with people that already were interested in that. That's a blessing. That's never happened before. And that's using electronic technology in order to give us an oasis, a choice to find a needle in the haystack if we're lucky enough. And secondly, even to become a needle in our own haystack. And for all young people who want to make films, dance, sing, cook, learn languages, to be able to get introduced to the University of Hangoutology and for free be privy to some real education and spiritual satisfaction, which you then can, think about, check out, and see what's right for you. That's a heck of a thing. It's like those wonderful stores you used to go to where you say, I want to get some shoes. And the guy, instead of whipping out a fashion magazine and beating you to death psychologically, they used to say, oh, okay. And you could be there like for 2 hours trying on different shoes. And they say, see if they fit and walk, and you got something that felt right for you. So I just thought of that now, but that's almost what the internet's like. It gives us a chance to try on some new shoes and see which ones fit to help us walk to get to that journey we're on.
Right. Information exchange, just to ask Nenad, to add to this, what the latest is each month. I know there are developments with the ping pong
Yes.
for next summer, and it would be a wonder if the four of us were all together at that international location.
That will be something. What I wanted, before I forget, 2 days ago was Pearl Harbor Day.
Yes.
I wrote the music for 2 movies about heroes from Pearl Harbor, and somebody took the photo, the video from the balcony. And if you don't mind, I will share. It's only 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Only 2 minutes long. So let me just try to see if we can do this. I don't know if do you see this?
It's about to come.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I see an image.
So let me just see if it plays the music. Do you hear anything?
It's in and out. There we go.
Hey,
There's Nenad.
right.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations.
There's somebody took this video from the balcony, and
Where did this take place?
in Zagreb.
In Zagreb.
Yeah, on December 7th.
Ah.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
David, would you have a memory of that day? Were you on the farm still? Were you...
I was living on the farm, and my father came up. We were digging something out of a big scoop, and I had the tractor out, and I was up making a sandwich. He came up and said, "David, they did it." He said, "It's going to be over 3 weeks." So, well, I remember we were shocked, and we listened to the radio news all day long, and that was on I think a Sunday, and then it ended our farming day. We just hung out and listened, and I never forgot my father coming up and telling me that that's what had happened. I don't know how he ever knew about it, but because he was down, we were digging this pond, and I came up from the tractor. I guess maybe somebody had come over or something, because we had no cell phones then, but he'd heard about it. I guess someone came by the farm and must have told him when he was down there, and I was up at the house, and just during that time, I remember, selling the corn out on the road for $1 a bag of 100 years of corn, and buying war bonds, and all of us kids collected scrap metal. There was a amazing feeling of solidarity that was so unique, and that continued. And it wasn't until 20 or 30 years later that any of us realized the racism that was involved in taking people, American citizens who were born here of Japanese descent, putting them in internment camps, and also the stuff in the movies of hateful things about all Asian people that were just staggering.
We have this entire
But there was the other side of the coin was the beautiful part of people actually feeling together, and then people, when the soldiers would come home, being honored, and it was just a shame. Years later, when I worked with the great actor Raymond Massey, he'd been in a film with Errol Flynn, and I said, "Oh, I remember that film." And he said, "Yes." He said, "That was quite a film." He said, "We figured that afternoon, Errol said he had killed 10,000 people." So we were brought up in a certain way. And then, of course, knowing about the Holocaust, which I did because of being Jewish and having the American Nazi Party up where I lived, I was aware of that. And we had some people who were considered refugees that were lucky enough to escape, came and lived on our farm with us. But the knowledge that we had was scattered, to put it mildly, but we weren't conscious as we are now of what a terrible thing that was. But ultimately you realize that all wars are terrible, and that the human response when you can't figure out a solution is just go punch them out. There's this amazing film made about Attica. And finally they realized rather than sitting down quietly and figuring out what to do, the answer is just blow them all away. That's called law and order. And that's been going on for so long. And so far, it hasn't achieved much of anything. And yet, on the other hand, what happened was so disgusting, and what was happening, and if the world hadn't gotten together, we would probably be living under the Third Reich day. So I guess what we can learn from all that is it was horrible, but let's not have it happen again, any of that. And there's a whole bunch of sides of the way different people felt. And I think now we can understand what happened in Asia, why they felt the way that they did. And secondly, what we can learn from what's happening now and see that we don't want now to be what was like then. But since we're the same humans with the same failings, if we don't look out, we haven't learned the lesson. And Eli Wiesel said it best. He said, "You have to forgive, but never forget." So I think that's what I think when I see Pearl Harbor, say, oh man, whatever it was, the stuff that led up to that was something that we have to somehow get together and do our little part to see that it doesn't happen, and not to allow ourselves to demonize millions of people we don't know, with whom we don't agree, and figure that they're the enemy. Because if we allow ourselves to have the enemy from within and get to hate millions of people that we don't even know because of what they supposedly think, which they're programmed to think in the first place, we're no different and no better than them. And it's not our job to tell them they're wrong, but for us to try to act more right and be compassionate. And that's easier said than done. And it's hard, but we have to figure a way to keep an open mind and an open heart and act human. And I think that's about all we can do. And that's a heck of a thing to be able to do that, or even to try to do that.
It doesn't play a big role in all of this, David? The role of music and your music. How do you see your music?
You know it. Well, that's the beautiful thing about music. It's there. All that crap is there. We're living in this world, but you can transcend that, as Miles Davis so eloquently called that song. So what? there is a lot of that. He say, man, that crap has been there, is here, always will be here. However, there's something else of a path you could follow, searching and trying for beauty. And many people have that. That's not exclusive to Miles or to jazz or to anything. Every person on earth has got a heritage and something spiritual and something beautiful, regardless of how funky it might have been to have to live through that to get on a boat and get over here. Whether you came on steerage in a slave ship or in a first-class ocean liner that didn't sink, you're still coming over on a boat to another place. And somehow we're all here, and all us boat people, which is everybody, have to overcome our colonized self-image of what a creep we are, and feel that we can all be with our fellow boat people and somehow get along. And when you're in the Army and you're all sleeping in a bunk, or when you're in jail, or when you're on a football team or making a community dinner, or if you're playing in a band or a symphony,
right. Sitting in an orchestra,
transcend all that crap, and suddenly you're something bigger than yourself. And that's very rewarding and enjoyable, spiritual, challenging, and scary sometimes, but worthwhile. And that's what music does, to bring us together. Not by having someone saying, all right, people, let's get together, and giving an Adolf Hitler impersonation of the left-wing variety, but rather bypassing all that left and right wing, as Pete Seeger said, for the bird to fly successfully, the left and right wing must be in harmony. Thelonious Monk said, man, he said, I played a piano, it's 88 keys, black and white, and they all got to fit into the whole piece I'm writing. And it's really transcending all that crap that we're dumped upon us every second, and say, well, okay, it's there, but there's something better than that. And music can remind us that we all are in the band somehow.
We're all in the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a movie that moved me so much about the siege of Leningrad, and our enemy, and when the troops finally won, and they brought scores of enemies that were, you know, tied together, and you know, and actually looking at this video, you couldn't tell who the good guys or who the bad guys were. So and it was like, and victims, absolutely.
In the end, even though, you know, there's evil, but they were all in the end,
I
victimized in a sense.
It inspired me to write a song that actually Richie Havens sang so wonderfully, called "The Sisters and Brothers We Adopt from the War." And it's like watching this movie, when they brought in the prisoners, you couldn't tell who the good guys or who the bad guys were. Everybody just looked distraught. Everybody looked, you know, it's the great connection that, you know, forgiveness is like part of this.
Yeah.
That comes into it, you know, and it's a moving thing that you just have to accept people.
Michael, you asked me to show something about ping pong. I'm organizing.
Just to let us know what's happening with the.
I'm organizing World Championship in next September 30th to October 3rd, and I'll show you the short video of 2 minutes from the first World Championship, if you don't mind.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I don't know if you see this.
Will it be on location?
In Pula.
In Pula?
Yeah.
In Pula?
Yeah, here we go.
Croatia.
This was done in New York.
Murray knows the place, huh? Yeah. Murray's familiar.
That's my next hang.
See, Murray, put it on your calendar for you and your wife.
Here you go, sorry.
Beautiful music, Nenad.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, anyway, these are my brothers and sisters with Parkinson.
Free to plug. Here you go.
Sorry.
I want to register now.
Murray, David, have you been to the Westchester Tennis Club? Have both of you visited yet?
No.
In
No.
Pleasantville? So, Nenad, what happened this spring? Maybe in the spring?
I hope so.
Yeah.
It helps tremendously, David. Playing table tennis makes you more smooth movements, good for body. It's really great sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
it's great. You know, one of the best shots was seeing that woman playing the brushes on the drum.
Yeah.
And the picture of the symphony, when you saw all those people playing the violin, probably every one of them spent their whole life saving up enough money to buy a violin and then pay it off for over 50 years, and to learn how to play it well enough to be in that orchestra. It's like getting 80 brain surgeons together, and there they all were sitting there playing something for your music for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
And showing people that said everything. So for the soured people to say music is dead and nobody wants to hear a symphony, BS. People in Zagreb, we got to catch up with them, and we are. There's a whole generation that is caught up with them, so Ned, it's great you could show that, because among other things, and showing the people and showing the older people and people of all ages playing together and doing something to heal themselves. Man, that's some heavy stuff. Yeah. And we wish that was on the network television, but the fact it's not, as Miles said, so what? Because it's here now, and being able to tape that and show that different places, some people are going to see that, and it only takes one person sometimes to help to light up the whole world. And that's why the third book the third messenger, the book of Job, the guy comes to the king, everybody else is wiped out, messed up, blown off, and he said, I alone am escaped to tell thee. And we can still read about it, because whoever put that stories in the Bible was aware how hip that was. one person can help to spread some light. And you're doing that, Nenad, and I think all of us, everybody can do that. And that alone made the whole program worthwhile. So what you're doing, man, is fantastic, using music for a higher purpose. And that's, but without all the rhetoric, like like the problem with that is that very often the problem and the injustice itself is a vehicle for selling something that's got nothing to do with that. And it's turned backwards, in other words. And you turned it back to what it's supposed to be. If it's a benefit or a consciousness raiser, it's for a good reason. And we're part of that process, just like we're part of the music. The music is the star, not us. And if you're doing something for a cause or an idea, the cause and the idea are what it's about. And I think what you showed about the people playing and showing them congratulating each other and getting awards and cheering each other on, and what a beautiful thing. That was something, man, very inspiring. I never knew about, and I doubt any of you viewers did. And I just hope more people, and I know will, know about that. And thank you, big thank you for doing that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I found the real the orchestra was from somebody from the balcony, but this is the real. Next time I can play a little bit or just give you a few seconds. This is the real recording. Just a moment. Let me just see if I can. And then I don't want to. Let me just see if you can hear it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, boy, that's something.
Yeah.
Just to see that is so beautiful. And you can see the musicians, you can feel when you're watching, they're listening and saying, oh man, you're bringing them into a whole other world that they were never felt viscerally part of. That's a terrific thing.
Anyway, I don't want to take too much of time,
Oh, it's terrific.
but
Beautiful, Nenad.
Great impressions.
yeah,
The piece live would be wonderful.
yeah. I don't know how I have to stop.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sure you'll listen. Who orchestrated that?
That's a young man called Olja Dešić from Croatia.
Yeah, he did terrific. And also, who was the conductor? He was excellent.
That's him.
Pardon?
He did.
That's him.
Same
Yeah.
person.
Same person, yeah.
Because you could see he was someone that was conducting and helping the music, not just wiggling around so he could get a better job.
Well, I'll tell him what you said.
Yeah,
He was very happy to hear this.
no, he was, and even with I'd love to hear if you could send what do they call it, MP3 or link or something,
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
so we could get better. But I could hear enough. You could really hear. Boy, that was some terrific stuff. And thank you.
That was a live performance. We recorded for the film. We had recordings.
And
That's even better.
the nice thing is the people seeing that who never seen the symphony, don't know from nothing. That's going to help to introduce them to the symphony orchestra as not some fossil, but the fact that there is such a thing and feel comfortable with it. Because how are you going to appreciate something if you never get to see it and hear it your whole life?
Yeah, yeah.
The answer is you can't.
You need
So
to be exposed.
folks who are culturally, and especially in the United States, who them and their parents, and I regret to say their grandparents, certainly them and their parents, are culturally deprived because they never see, hear, or know anything about it except in the most stereotypical, crappy way. And it's not their fault so that they don't know anything about it, because just like the Ayatollah doesn't allow certain things in Iran to exist anymore, and you go to prison if you know about it, they're censored out, or were censored out in our culture, and you're not doing anybody a favor by taking what you consider to be dead art forms and jamming it down their throats. It's just something beautiful, not only for symphony music, but for all musics and all things of value. And one of them is the great European tradition. And one of the nice things is in the great European tradition, we're finally beginning to see that people of color also have a whole bunch to contribute to that. And people of color have a great deal to contribute of something from their own infinite number of heritages that have nothing to do with color, but just have to do with the preponderance of people who created those enduring works of art, which are for everybody. That's why Yo-Yo Ma didn't come from the Bach family, but man, can he play Bach, because he's channeling it, because he spent his whole life being that and learning that and being able to do that. And it shows us that anybody can do anything, that all heritages are all precious, and languages, each of them has its own lifetime study, and then permutations within those languages. So that's a big mouthful of oatmeal at this time of the program. But I think what you're doing has ramifications way above even what you're doing so beautifully, which is to show that people with Parkinson's disease shouldn't be put in the landfill. Secondly, they can look after themselves. Third of all, we can look after them. Fourth of all, we could think about other people and think about our own health. And fifth of all, the art you create can also be artistic, beautiful, entertaining, fun, viable, commercial, if you want to say, and people can pay to come and see and hear it, but that is terrific and valuable, and that is for something good, it leads you to something else that's good. And the connection is not the disgusting melting pot of slime gruel with additives to string you out to buy more slime gruel to relieve your pain that you're afflicted upon by being told what a creep you are because you don't fit into that slime pot of non-existent culture, non-existent, called the melting pot, which is nothing. But the Canadian idea of the mosaic of everyone adding their precious ingredient. And what Dizzy Gillespie told me about their New Orleans concept of the gumbo, that everybody puts their little bit of the best they can do into that nutritious pot. And then when you partake from that pot, you're re-nourished, not just by what you put in, but the beauty of what everyone else put in. And when you think of stuff that way, then life's a lot more meaningful, and you figure you got something to contribute. And you've done that. You put a whole lot in the pot by showing us a symphony orchestra doing something on a higher level and not taking off all their clothes and peeing on the floor in order to be trendy, or playing some crap garbage with 45,000 tractor loads of electronic instrument, drowning them out so you can excuse their being there, but just showing what it is, and how what it is what it's always been. Group of people getting together to do something more beautifully than any one person could do alone. So thank you for doing that. It's a heck of a thing. And I hope we can get a copy of this program. I'd like to show that to some people without my hot air so they can check it out. Because as Stravinsky said, music expresses itself.
Well, let's finish with that great thought. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you, David. Without you, we wouldn't do this. This is your idea, Hangoutology, and I enjoy each and every time.
Oh, God bless you. Well, man, it wasn't my idea, Nemeth. I was Nenad, excuse me. I've been fortunate enough growing up on a farm with zero expectations of anything to be able to bump into people who were kind enough and still are kind enough when they see I can say please and thank you, to help me in that University of Hangoutology to study what I don't know anything about, but am welcome to be a student of, just by paying attention to people that know more than me, that are better than I'll ever be, and then figuring out how I can possibly learn more about that, and then share the little bit of what I know. And if I mentioned all the names of the great hangoutologists I knew, some of whom were world famous, some of whom are not remotely world famous, and it doesn't matter, because they all had that thing of having something that they could share with you, some knowledge, a story, a recipe, a song, a way of being. Wow. That's some important stuff. And we can all get that from anybody and everybody. And that's what Hangoutology is all about. And Sir James Galway expressed that to be the best, #1 flute player in the world, top grossing classical artist, one of the 5 that could fill up any house. And I said, Sir Jimmy, when I wrote that concerto for you and went to the different orchestras, the way you hung out with all the flute players in the orchestra, all the kids, all the fans, all the people in the second violin section that no one would speak to, all the jazz musicians,
not to mention the viola section,
that knew and admired you. You were cool with everybody, man. And he said, quote, "The part of Ireland I'm from, we don't endorse putting on airs." Sir James said that, God bless him. And I leave you all with that, because that's the key. And the great hangoutologists realize you have a better life if you try to keep it for real and keep yourself for real, and you know, pay attention and have some respect for others.
What it is. It's a
David,
go down feeling.
That sounds like great homework for our next assignment, right?
And I'll tell you, I'm trying to be that way myself, and it's a struggle every day to walk a little of that walk that you talk. But it's a worthwhile struggle, because at least you're trying to get on the right track.
Okay, boys.
Yeah, that's great.
On that note, thank you for hanging out. And I'll see you next in January, first Tuesday in January at 8 p.m.
No homework. No homework.
No homework. I don't know what is the date, but I can look quickly if you want. Let me just look.
I want to know about when that's happening in Pula next.
Yes, it's in January.
No, oh, the next.
Yeah, actually January 4th, I will be in Florida, but I will try to do it from Florida.
Great.
And for Murray, it's the end of September in Pula, September 30th?
30th, September 30th.
October 2nd?
October 3rd.
October 3rd.
And if you see Dr. Nitty or a contact with Dr. Nitty, she's on Clubhouse, but I still can't figure out how to use the computer. But she was,
yes.
And it was because of that I got back together with Nenad in the cyber world, and she's going to studying to be a doctor. And she also, when she was 7 years old, she said, I would like to start an orphanage. And she still feels that way as a young up and coming doctor. So people in medicine and all, and I've got one of those fumbling around with the computer. Man, I was listening for 2 hours on the Clubhouse, whatever that is, somehow got on it. I don't know how to do that stuff yet, but it was fascinating. There's so many good things on this technical thing of the computer that enable us to be free of slime free and get some good education as well as entertainment. That's a wonderful thing. And Dr. Nitty was the one who brought us together and told me and helped me to spend an hour and a half learning how to even be able to access this. So I want to thank her and all those other young medical students and people that she hangs out with, and thank all you guys for being so terrific for what you have been doing, are doing, and will be doing. And that encourages other people we'll never meet to feel, man, they got something they can do too.
Should all do it before we're gone.
Amen.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night. I'll post this in 1 hour probably.
Great.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Bye.
Okay, bye, Murray. Bye, Nenad.